We got married yesterday, she smiled, polishing the diamond my savings bought. The spoon slipped from my hand and hit the tile like a gavel. Even the walls knew something had cracked inside me. The house smelled of dish soap and Sunday ham. Outside, the wind pushed against the curtains like it was trying to warn me. I stood there, frozen, suds sliding down my wrist, watching her, my daughter-in-law, Lena, rock side to side in her new white sweater. Her tone was sugar, her eyes were frost. Special ceremony, she added, like she was giving me a recipe. Just family. Just family. 3 years I'd paid their rent, $500 every month, never late. $18,000 gone, a roof over their heads when their credit was bad and their luck was worse. I'd filled their pantry when storms took their paychecks. Bought them furniture so they could feel like adults. I even helped pick out her engagement ring, the one now sparkling like betrayal between her fingers. I swallowed. You got married yesterday. MHM, she glanced toward the hallway. We wanted something intimate. Max, my son, appeared behind her. My boy, my only one, he didn't meet my eyes, his collar was open, hair mussed from sleep or guilt. Mama, he said quietly, it just kinda happened. The words hit like cold rain, kinda happened. Love don't kinda happen, lies do. I wiped my hands on a towel that still smelled like lavender, the scent I'd used since the day I brought him home from the hospital. My voice came out steady, softer than I felt. Congratulations. Lena smiled wider, the kind of smile that shows teeth but no warmth. Thank you. Oh, and don't worry, we'll pay you back one day for everything. Everything. She said it like a punchline. That night, I didn't sleep. The clock ticked loud enough to count every beat of my heart. I replayed the moment, the way Max looked away, the way she leaned on my counter like she owned it. I thought about the pink dress hanging in my closet, still tagged, waiting for a wedding that never wanted me. At 3 a.m., I walked to the kitchen. The tile was cold. Moonlight hit the sink, silver and judgmental. I opened the drawer and found the envelope I'd tucked away, the receipts. Rent checks, grocery runs, the ring's down payment. All of it proof of love turned ledger. When you get older, baby, you learn to keep your receipts, not just the paper kind. Morning came with birds singing too cheerfully for my mood. I brewed coffee strong enough to wake ghosts. The smell filled the house, warm but hollow. The phone buzzed, text from Max. Hey Ma, Lena wants to come by later to grab a few of her things. Her things in my house. I texted back, sure, I'll be home. When they arrived, I'd already set 2 mugs on the table. One black for me, one sweet for him, the way he liked since college. He didn't touch it. Lena sat first, crossing her legs, tapping nails that matched the ring's shimmer. So about the car, she began. My eyebrow lifted, what about it? It's technically in your name, she said, tilting her head. But Max and I've been the ones driving it. We figured it makes sense to transfer the title. Max cleared his throat. She's right, Ma. The kitchen clock clicked once. Somewhere the dog barked. I looked from her to him and back again. Transfer the title, I repeated, tasting the absurdity. Yes, Lena said, smiling, just to make things official. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes steady. Official, like your marriage. Her smile faltered. Well, yes. Silence sat heavy between us, thick as humidity before a storm. Finally, I said, you can have the car, Lena. I don't need it anymore. Her surprise flickered quick, like lightning behind clouds. Really? I nodded. It'll save me the trouble of watching it drive away anyway. Max looked up then, eyes wide, confused by my calm. Mama. Don't, I cut him off gently. Y'all got new journeys ahead, take what you need. She beamed, thank you, you're so understanding. I smiled too, but mine was a quiet, dangerous kind of peace, because what she didn't know was that car had a loan attached, 3 months overdue, insurance canceled, title tied to a business account she couldn't touch. Sometimes revenge don't wear red, sometimes it wears a calm smile and a bank receipt. After they left, I sat in that silence again. The coffee was cold. The house colder. I walked to the window and watched the tail lights fade down the street. My chest hurt, not from anger, but from remembering. I remembered the boy who used to run barefoot on this porch, waving worms at me like trophies. The boy who used to promise he'd take care of me when I got old. The same boy now too scared to look his mama in the eye. Ever love somebody so much you disappeared in the process? I whispered to the empty room. The wind didn't answer. but the floor creaked like it understood. The next week, folks at church whispered, "News travels fast in small towns. Did you hear? Max Dunn got married without his mama there." Some pitied me, others smiled that sweet poison smile folks save for gossip dressed as prayer. I sat through service quiet, letting the preacher talk about forgiveness like it was easy. But forgiveness without apology is just silence with lipstick on. After service, Sister Ruth patted my hand. "You holding up, Helen." "God gives lessons," I said. "Some just come with late fees." She chuckled softly. "Amen to that." 2 days later, a letter arrived. My name typed neat on the envelope. Inside, a wedding photo, Max in a blue suit, Lena in lace, standing under an arch of fake roses. My heart clenched, not from the photo itself, but from the note scribbled beneath. "Wish you could have been there. Love, Max and Lena." Wish I could have been there. The handwriting was his, but the words were hers. I knew that curl on the L anywhere. I stared until the ink blurred, then folded the picture back into its envelope. Not out of hate, but preservation. Every story needs its evidence. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted distance, I'd give them the horizon. If they wanted independence, I'd give them a map with no bridges back. I opened my laptop and logged into the joint account, the one I'd used to pay their rent. My hand hovered for a second. Then I transferred the remaining balance into a new account under my name only. Call it selfish if you want, I call it self-defense. Then I called the bank and asked to freeze the old card. Fraud prevention, I told the clerk. Not a lie, just prophecy. A week later, Max called. His voice was tight. "Ma, did you close the card?" "I did." "Why?" "Because I was done paying for people who already said their vows." "Mama, it's not like that." "I know exactly what it's like," I said softly, "and you do too." He sighed long and heavy. "Lena's upset. She says you're punishing us." I laughed once low. "If I wanted to punish you, baby, you'd know. This here is just peace with boundaries." He didn't answer right away. I heard the faint hum of a television, Lena's voice in the background, the sound of a woman who thinks she's winning. "Love you, Ma," he said finally. "I know," I replied. "One day you'll prove it." That night I sat on the porch, moonlight sliding over the railing like silver forgiveness. The crickets sang. Somewhere down the road, a dog barked at nothing. I rocked slow, the chair creaking in rhythm with my breath. People think revenge is a fire. But baby, sometimes it's a tide, quiet, steady, unstoppable. And the tide was just beginning to rise. The morning after I froze that account, the air smelled different. Not like rain or soap, like freedom. It's funny how silence can sound expensive when peace finally cost you something. I was making cornbread when my phone started buzzing like a wasp in a jar. "Unknown number," the screen said. I wiped my hands on a towel. "Hello." "Mrs. Jefferson?" The voice was crisp, businesslike. "This is Donna from Lakeside Credit. I'm calling to confirm payment arrangements for the Camry account ending in 4132. My smile was small, steady. "Oh, honey, that account belongs to my daughter-in-law now." Silence, then paper shuffling. "Ma'am, it's still under your name." "I know," I said sweetly, "and she'll learn that soon enough." By lunchtime, Lena called. No greeting, no sugar, just thunder. "Why did you do that?" "Do what, baby?" "You froze the card, you left your name on the loan. You're making me look stupid." I stirred my soup slow. "Oh no, Lena, you don't need my help for that." She inhaled sharply. "You're jealous, that's what this is. You can't stand that Max chose me." I let her talk because silence teaches better than shouting. Finally, I said, "You right about one thing, Lena. He did choose you. But remember, what you choose, you also maintain. I just took my name off the light bill." "You're so petty," she snapped. "No, baby, I'm precise." She hung up. The spoon clinked against the pot like applause. That evening, I went to my backyard. The magnolia tree was in bloom, wide white petals heavy with scent. My late husband, Harold, planted that tree the year Max was born. Said he wanted his boy to grow under something that would outlive him. I touched the bark. "Harold," I whispered, "you'd be proud. I didn't shout, I didn't curse. I just let the Lord handle it with my signature." The wind blew soft like approval. "See, when Max met Lena, I didn't see trouble, I saw myself at 25. Pretty, hopeful, loud about love. She came from little like me. Her mama cleaned houses. Her daddy was gone before she could spell his name. The first Christmas she joined us, she brought a pie she swore was homemade. I knew Publix when I tasted it, but I didn't say a word. I just smiled, cut 2 slices, and told her it was perfect. That's what mothers do when they love their sons too much. We edit reality. For 3 years, I excused her temper, her little comments. Oh, Helen, you're so traditional. Oh, you still balance a checkbook. Oh, you keep your Bible on the table. I laughed through all of it till I realized she wasn't joking. Then came the money problems. First month, rent late. Second month, Lena's job cut hours. Third month, Ma will pay you back soon. By the 6th month, I started keeping a ledger. Not for revenge, for truth. Truth, baby, is the only currency that never loses value. When Max lost his job, I covered the bills. When Lena's car broke down, I co-signed for another. And when they said they couldn't afford a wedding yet, I said, love don't need a date, baby. It needs a foundation. So I waited patiently, silently, till the day she smiled and told me, we got married yesterday. That was the day patience met its expiration date. A week later, I saw Lena again, not planned. I was at the grocery store, pushing my cart through frozen foods. She was near the self-checkout, phone in hand, arguing with someone. I almost walked past. Almost. But the Lord has a way of timing things like theater. Lena, I said, smiling. Her eyes widened, Helen's high. She looked different, not glowing like a newlywed. More like a storm cloud pretending to be spring. I held up a bag of frozen okra. Can't beat 2 for $5, huh? She forced a laugh, yeah. You okay, baby? Fine. Her voice cracked just a little. Tell Max I said hi, I said gently. She nodded, scanning her items too fast, dropped a bag, muttered a curse. I saw the decline on her screen before she could hide it. Card declined. For a second, she froze, like I had at my sink that day. Karma, don't text before it arrives. When I got home, I brewed tea and sat on my porch. The afternoon was gold and heavy, cicadas loud like gossipers in choir robes. I thought about calling her, not to mock, but to test my own mercy. But mercy, I decided, ain't free when disrespect costs so much. That night, Max came by. No Lena, just him. Mama, he started, standing in the doorway like a boy again. We're struggling. I motioned to the chair, sit. He did, shoulders slumped, hands clasped. She's been trying to find work, rent's due, the car. I know, I said softly. He blinked, you's do. I always know before you tell me, that's a mother's curse. He looked up then, eyes red around the edges. She's different lately, mean, even. Pressure changes people, I said, but it don't make them what they ain't already. He exhaled, I don't know what to do. I poured him tea, then don't do, just sit, let the storm teach her who she is. He sipped quiet, then, did you close the account to teach me a lesson? No, I said, I closed it to teach myself boundaries. When he left, he kissed my forehead like he used to when he was little. That night, I cried for both of us. Not because I was sad. Because I was healing. And healing, baby, hurts before it helps. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Voicemail. Mrs. Jefferson, this is Attorney Sanders from Riverbank Legal. We've received a notice that your car loan has defaulted. Please contact us to avoid repossession. My smile came back, slow, dangerous. Because that car, the one she begged for, was the last thread connecting her to my name. And I was about to cut it. That afternoon, I walked into Riverbank Legal with my church hat on and my Bible tucked under my arm. The young receptionist looked up, polite but puzzled. Can I help you, ma'am? Yes, baby, I said, handing her the notice. I'm here to transfer ownership, effective immediately. She blinked, you're surrendering the vehicle. I smiled, oh no, darling, I'm reclaiming it. The lawyer stepped out, white man, late 40s, kind face but eyes like calculators. Mrs. Jefferson, if you'd like to avoid default, we can repossess the car now and settle at 70% of remaining balance. Do it, I said. I'll pay it in cash. He frowned. You're certain? Yes, I said, standing tall. Because that car is sitting in front of a woman who don't own it, don't deserve it, and don't know it yet. When I left that office, the sun felt sweeter than it had in months. Justice don't always come from judges, sometimes it comes from signatures. And somewhere across town, Lena was probably staring at an empty driveway, learning her first real lesson in gratitude. The next call came at 6 p.m. sharp. My phone lit up. Max. I answered, hey baby. Mama, what did you do? The car, gone. Oh, somebody must have picked up what wasn't theirs. You called the repo people. Baby, I said softly, I called Peace. They just happened to drive a tow truck. He was quiet for a long time. Then, you're enjoying this. I sighed. No, Max, I'm remembering who I am. That night, the house was quiet. The magnolia tree shimmered silver under moonlight. I poured myself a small glass of sweet tea and whispered to the night. They thought I'd stay quiet. I stayed watchin'. That night, the moon was full, hanging over the porch like God's own eye, half closed and judging. The wind rustled the magnolia tree, and I swear it whispered, now they know who they dealing with. I didn't reply, just rocked in my chair, slow, the wood creaking under 70 years of memory. Justice don't always knock loud, sometimes it slides in through the mailbox. At 7:12 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, the name on the screen didn't say Max, it said Lena. Good morning, I answered, voice steady. Morning, she snapped. You think this is funny? Depends on what this is. Our car got repossessed, we're stranded at his job. He's embarrassed, Helen. Do you even care what you've done? Baby, I cared too long, that's the problem. She exhaled, loud and sharp. You're evil. No, Lena, I said softly. I'm educated, there's a difference. She started to say something else, then stopped. Maybe she realized shouting into calm water just shows your reflection. The line went dead. 2 days later, brown boxes began arriving at my porch, each one addressed to Mrs. H. Jefferson. Inside, every gift I'd ever given them. The photo frame from their first anniversary. The blender I bought when they said they'd start cooking at home. Even the cross-stitched pillow that said, family is forever. I stacked them all neatly in the hallway, didn't open a single one. When people return what's good, it's not rejection, it's confession. Harold used to say, Helen, kindness without boundaries is charity with no church. Back then I'd laugh, tell him the Lord don't count dollars, he counts intentions. But that was before I watched my sister die, with her name co-signed on 5 loans that weren't hers. Before I watched my niece lose her house because she trusted family. I'd seen the cycle, women like me paying for people who never paid attention. So when Lena said, we got married yesterday, I didn't just hear betrayal. I heard warning confirmed. On Friday afternoon, a letter came from my lawyer, Mr. Garner, retired but sharp as vinegar. He'd handled Harold's estate, and I'd kept him on retainer, just in case life turned theatrical. Helen, it read. Per your request, the trust transfer for your property has been filed. The house is now listed solely under your LLC, separate from personal estate. Any future inheritance claims must go through legal arbitration. I smiled. See, I wasn't angry, I was organizing. Because you can't play chess with people who think life is checkers. That Sunday at church, Pastor Raymond preached about the prodigal son. Sometimes, he said, you gotta let the child leave the house before they realize where home really was. I whispered an amen that felt like closure. After service, I slipped a small check into the offering plate, the exact amount of my final rent payment for Max. Symbolic tithe, I called it. Closure in currency form. A week later, I was in line at the post office when I overheard 2 women talking. Girl, you hear about that young couple out on Pine Street? Rent bounced twice. Landlord threatening eviction. Pine Street. That was their address. I didn't say a word. Just stepped forward, mailed my letters, and walked out into the sunshine like I'd just witnessed scripture unfolding in real time. You don't have to chase revenge when it already knows your address. That evening, a knock came at my door. 3 knocks, sharp, nervous. I opened it to find Max, alone again. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, eyes sunken, shirt untucked, guilt clinging to him like humidity. Hey, Ma, he murmured. Hey, baby. Can I come in? I stepped aside. You always can, just remember it's a privilege, not a promise. He sat down at the kitchen table, the same spot where Lena had once demanded my car. This time, no coffee waiting, just truth. Mama, he began, I think I messed up. I said nothing, just listened. She's been distant, moody, spends money like she's trying to prove something. That's what guilt sounds like when it walks, I said. He rubbed his face. She said you're trying to ruin her life. I smiled faintly. Baby, she already did that before I lifted a finger. He stared at his hands, silent for a long while. Then quietly, she wants me to cut you off completely. And what do you want? I asked. His eyes met mine. The boy I raised flickered somewhere behind the man he'd become. I don't know anymore. I reached across the table, laid my hand on his. You'll remember when truth hurts worse than love. He nodded, tears gathering like rain at the edge of his lashes. There comes a point in every mama's life when she stops fighting for her child's peace and starts protecting her own. I wasn't angry at Max anymore, I was grieving him. Grieving the version of him that used to call me Mama with pride. Grieving the boy who'd once said, if I ever get married, you'll walk me down the aisle. But grief, when healed right, becomes guidance. 2 days later, my lawyer phoned again. Mrs. Jefferson, he said, I thought you should know your daughter-in-law attempted to access the old trust record claiming power of attorney. Power of what? I laughed, low and bitter. He chuckled too. Don't worry, she failed. Your documentation is airtight. Bless you, Mr. Garner, I said, and bless her ignorance. I hung up and looked out at my magnolia tree, the blossoms swaying gentle like slow applause. That night, I dreamt of Harold. He was sitting on the porch, tuning his old radio. Baby, he said, storms don't destroy trees with deep roots. When I woke, rain was tapping the window, soft but steady. And that's when I knew this storm wasn't done yet. Because the devil never leaves without trying the back door. The storm rolled in just before dawn. Thunder like the deep moan of something ancient. Rain hammering the tin awning like God himself, keeping tempo for a reckoning. I made coffee in the dark, didn't turn the lights on, just listened to the thunder talk. That's when my phone lit up again. Lena. I let it ring. And ring. And stop. Then a voicemail. Helen, you think you won, but you don't know who you're dealing with. Max and I are moving. We'll figure it out without you. You're bitter, old, and alone. Alone. That word sat heavy. Not because it was true, but because once upon a time, I was proud to be their home. Now, I was just their ghost. I sat at the kitchen table, the house humming low with the sound of rain and memory. On the counter, the unopened boxes they'd returned sat stacked like tombstones. I ran my hand across the cardboard, the ink smeared slightly from humidity. And I whispered, I built y'all a life from my own bones, but bones grow back, baby. Days passed quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you realize how loud love used to be. No calls, no texts. Just bills, their names still appearing on my old statements like ghosts, refusing to forward their mail. So I did what women like me always do when the world forgets us. I cleaned. Scrubbed the counters till they shine like silver. Washed the curtains, polished the silverware. The act of order becomes a kind of prayer when life feels disordered. And as I worked, I thought, not about them, but about me. About the woman who'd survived segregation, funerals, foreclosure scares, and still kept a garden that bloomed every spring. I'd been strong before they ever learned my name. That evening, I opened the oldest photo album on my shelf. Inside were snapshots of my life, sepia smiles, faded church dresses, Harold grinning with that lopsided tooth. On one page, baby Max, swaddled in blue, cheeks round and glowing. On another, him at 10, holding a jar of fireflies, saying, "Look, Mama, I caught the stars." My eyes watered. I pressed a palm against that page, like maybe warmth could travel through time. "I raised you to love right," I whispered, "but I forgot to teach you how to recognize wrong dressed in perfume." Next morning, I woke before sunrise. Something inside me had settled. Not peace exactly, strategy. I made a list. A. Protection plan. 1. Transfer all assets to the trust. 2. Rewrite the will, removing joint claims. 3. Secure the deed on the Magnolia property. 4. Notify Pastor Raymond of charitable intent clause. That fourth one made me smile. Because the best revenge ain't money, it's legacy. I put on my Sunday hat, navy blue, wide-brimmed, respectful but regal. The kind of hat that says, "This is business, but so is dignity." At the bank, the young teller smiled politely. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today?" "I'd like to finalize my estate lock," I said, "and transfer my primary residence into my charitable trust." She blinked, clearly not used to old women speaking like CEOs. Certainly, Mrs. Jefferson. Do you have the trust documents with you?" I handed her the neatly labeled folder, all notarized. When the manager came to double-check the paperwork, I signed each line slow and deliberate. Every stroke of my pen felt like reclaiming oxygen. When it was done, I stood up, smoothed my dress, and said softly, "If anyone comes asking about my property, you tell them Aunt Helen moved her blessings to God's account." That night, Max called again. This time, his voice was different, quiet, uncertain. "Ma," he said, "we got evicted." I paused. "Where are you now?" "At a motel. She's mad, real mad. Keeps saying it's all your fault." I closed my eyes, listening to the rain outside. "And what do you think?" He hesitated. "I think you warned me." There it was. The crack in the pride. The sound of realization being born. Ever love somebody so much, you start confusing their peace with your purpose. That's what I'd done for years, loved till I forgot my own reflection. But sometimes, God breaks your heart just to remind you what you sound like when you pray for yourself. "Max," I said gently, "come home." A silence. "I can't, Ma, she won't let me." "You're grown, baby. Ain't no woman let a man do what he already decided not to." He didn't answer. Just a long breath. And then, softly, "I'll call you tomorrow." He didn't. That night, I dreamt of the magnolia tree again, petals falling slow, glowing white under moonlight. But this time, there were two figures standing beneath it. Harold and a younger version of me. He took my hand. "You did right, Helen. The fruit ain't yours to force, you just plant the seed." I looked at the younger me, eyes tired but burning. She smiled, then faded with the dawn. When I woke, the house was filled with light. Peace, real peace, the kind that don't apologize for being quiet. At 10:37 a.m., the phone rang again. "Number blocked." I answered anyway. A voice, unfamiliar but urgent. "Mrs. Jefferson, this is Officer Haynes from the county precinct. Do you know a Mrs. Lena Coleman?" My chest tightened. "Yes, she's my daughter-in-law." "There's been an incident," he said. "Nothing fatal, but she's been taken into custody for filing false financial documents. Your name was listed as guarantor." I sat still. Completely still. "Are you able to come down to the station to confirm your disassociation?" I smiled slowly, tears welling not from joy, but from revelation. "Yes, officer, I'll be right there." When I hung up, the magnolia branches tapped against the window like polite applause. "God don't sleep, baby," I whispered to myself. "He just lets fools dream first." The police station smelled like burnt coffee and old paperwork. Ceiling fan turning lazy circles, fluorescent lights humming like tired cicadas. I sat in the plastic chair near the desk, hands folded, calm as a hymn. Across the counter, a young officer kept glancing at me like he wasn't sure whether to offer water or an apology. "Mrs. Jefferson," he said finally, "you're free to go. We've verified your signatures. You're not liable for anything your daughter-in-law submitted. I smiled politely. Thank you, baby. I've been free for a while, y'all just caught up. He half smiled. For what it's worth, she's not talkin'. Keep sayin' you set her up. I stood, smoothing my dress. If self-respect is a setup, then I suppose I did. He handed me a folder. Inside were copies of the forged forms Lena had filed. Loan extensions, credit line requests, even an insurance claim using my address. All of it signed Helen M. Jefferson, in handwriting that looked like a child imitating cursive. I stared at those crooked letters. Not angry, just astonished at the arrogance. People think stealing is about money. It's about entitlement, the quiet belief that you can take what belongs to someone who won't fight back. I closed the folder and handed it back. Keep it, I said. I already lived it once. Rain was coming down steady when I stepped out of that building. The air tasted metallic, like truth fresh off the wire. I opened my umbrella and walked slow down the courthouse steps, heels clicking against wet concrete. Somewhere behind me, thunder rolled. I wasn't scared. I'd already survived worse storms than this one. That evening, my phone rang again. Max? Mama? His voice cracked halfway through the word. I heard, I said softly. You all right? I don't know. They said she forged your name. They said she. It's true. A silence. Then a sound, not crying exactly. Just air leaving a man who realized he'd been holding his breath for 3 years. I should have believed you, he said. You should have believed yourself, I replied. He sniffed. She's in jail. I know. What do I do? Start over, I said, clean, quiet, honest. He didn't speak for a while, then. I want to come home. 2 hours later, headlights rolled up my driveway. I watched from the window, arms crossed, heart steady. When Max stepped out of that car, he looked smaller than I remembered, not in body but in pride. The boy who once thought he knew everything now looked like he finally knew enough. I opened the door before he could knock. He froze. Ma. Comin' out that rain, I said. He did, soaked, shivering, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and regret. He sat at the kitchen table, that same table where this whole story began. I poured him coffee, the smell filling the silence between us. I'm sorry, he said finally. I let her talk me into things I didn't even understand. I know, I said. You let love turn you into a shadow. He looked up, eyes glistening. Can you forgive me? I reached across the table, touched his hand. Forgiveness don't erase memory, baby, but it makes it easier to live with. He nodded, tears spilling this time. She said I'd lose everything without her. I smiled softly. Then thank her. She told the truth, she just had the wrong definition of everything. For the first time in months, we ate dinner together. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread so fresh the butter melted before it hit the crust. He told me about the sleepless nights, the eviction, the fear. I listened without judgment. When we finished, I said, go on upstairs, the guest room's ready. He blinked. You kept it. Of course, every prodigal deserves a bed to rest before rebuilding. He smiled, small, tired, grateful. Thank you, Ma. Get some sleep, I said. Tomorrow we start counting blessings again. Sunlight poured through the kitchen window. Max was already up, sweeping the porch like old times. I watched him for a moment, heart softening with each motion. Then the mail truck stopped out front. The driver handed me a large envelope. From county clerk's office. I opened it. Inside, a court summons. Case, Lena Coleman v. Helen Jefferson, claim, emotional distress and defamation. I laughed out loud. Baby, I said to the empty room, she really won a second round. By noon, I was at my lawyer's office. Mr. Garner looked up from the document, adjusting his glasses. She's suing you, he said, incredulous, after committing fraud. Pride don't read the room, I said. He chuckled. Don't worry, we'll bury this before it breathes. He leaned forward. You want me to countersue? I shook my head. No, I want to educate, file a public response, list every verified transaction, every forgery. Let the truth embarrass her better than money ever could. He smiled. You always did prefer poetic justice. Baby, I said, poetry lasts longer than vengeance. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the last of the storm fade into orange sky. The magnolia tree shimmered, branches heavy but unbroken. And I whispered, kindness ain't weakness, it's just patient revenge. Somewhere across town, a woman sat in a jail cell, realizing the quiet she'd mocked was the same silence now surrounding her. And somewhere else, my son finally slept in peace. The courthouse smelled of bleach and arrogance. Marble floors echoing footsteps that didn't know humility. I walked in slow, wide-brimmed hat, navy suit, pearls that used to belong to my mama. Some folks go to war with guns. I go with documentation and dignity. Lena sat at the defendant's table, hands cuffed, eyes dark with fury. Her hair was uncombed, her pride half dead. But when she saw me walk in, she straightened her spine like a cat arching at thunder. The judge cleared his throat. Mrs. Coleman, you're filing for emotional distress against Mrs. Jefferson. Lena stood chin high. Yes, Your Honor, she's been harassing me. Took my car, ruined my reputation, froze my accounts. Her voice cracked on the word reputation. I almost pitied her, almost. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Jefferson, would you like to respond? I rose slow, every motion deliberate. Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to begin with a definition. He frowned slightly. A definition. Yes, sir, emotional distress means damage caused by another person's actions. But as far as I can tell, the only thing I damaged was her access to my money. The courtroom murmured. I laid the folder on the desk, opened it neatly. These are the loan applications she forged, the false insurance claims, the bank letters showing I paid her debts until she replaced gratitude with greed. The judge adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Coleman, is this true? Lena stammered. She gave us permission. Permission don't include forgery, baby, I said softly, not looking at her. It includes respect, and you lost that when you signed my name in ink that wasn't yours. The judge banged his gavel once. Enough, the court will recess for review. Outside the courtroom, Max waited. His eyes searched mine, full of something between guilt and gratitude. I didn't know it was this bad, he said quietly. I know you didn't, baby. You believed love would fix what discipline should have prevented. He swallowed hard. You still love me. I smiled faintly. You ain't done enough wrong to change that. You just learned the cost of ignoring your mother's silence. He nodded slowly, like the lesson had finally landed. There's a certain kind of strength you only get after people mistake your quiet for surrender. And there's a certain kind of peace that blooms only when you stop rescuing folks who set their own fires. I realized that day that Lena wasn't my burden, she was my boundary lesson, wrapped in a wedding ring. When the judge came back, he cleared his throat again, softer this time. Having reviewed the evidence, I find Mrs. Jefferson free of all claims. The case is dismissed with prejudice. Lena gasped, hands trembling. This isn't fair. The judge leaned forward. Fairness isn't a word for people who forge signatures, Mrs. Coleman. You're lucky she hasn't filed charges. I stood, gathering my papers. Oh, she's not that lucky, Your Honor. Charges have already been filed under a separate docket. Gasps again, this time louder. Lena turned, eyes wide, lips parting like the first crack in a porcelain doll. You can't do that, she whispered. Baby, I said, stepping closer, voice like velvet wrapped around a blade. You already did. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was split between gray and gold, a halfway kind of peace. Reporters gathered near the steps, small-town gossip hunters dressed like journalists. One woman pushed a mic toward me. Mrs. Jefferson, any comment for the community? Yes, I said. Kindness ain't weakness, it's just quiet until it learns to roar. The crowd murmured approval. Even the cameraman nodded. Back home, I took off my hat and set it on the entry table beside the unopened boxes. I thought about opening them again, touching the remnants of a life that used to feel like family. But I didn't. I just whispered, some gifts you return to yourself. Then I made tea, strong and sweet, and sat by the window watching my magnolia tree shimmer in the dusk. At 8:03 p.m., my phone rang again. Number blocked. I knew who it was before I answered. Hello, Lena. Her voice was quiet, almost hollow. You ruined my life. I didn't respond right away, just let the silence stretch. Finally, I said, No, baby. You ruined your reflection. I just held up the mirror. She inhaled, shaky. He left me. I know, I said gently. I don't have anyone. I looked out the window, at the glow of streetlights bending through the rain. Then maybe now you'll meet yourself. Click. The line went dead. I poured a second cup of tea, though there was no one to drink it. Habit, maybe, or hope. Max came down the stairs a few minutes later, barefoot, holding an old photo of us at his high school graduation. She looks small now, he said softly. Evil always does when light hits it right, I replied. He sat across from me, looked around the kitchen. It feels peaceful here again. It always was, I said. Y'all just brought the noise. He laughed, real laughter this time, deep and free. Then he said, You ever think you could forgive her? I thought about it, sipped my tea. Forgiveness ain't about her, baby. It's about me not letting bitterness earn rent in my heart. He nodded slowly. I don't deserve you, Ma. I smiled. I didn't raise you to deserve me, Max. I raised you to understand me. There's a difference. The room was quiet except for the rain's gentle tapping, like applause from heaven. I leaned back, eyes half closed, whispering. They wanted my silence, so I gave them a sermon. Morning came with soft light, that kind of gentle gold that don't ask for attention, just gives it. The magnolia tree was in bloom again, every branch heavy with white petals that looked like forgiveness learning to float. I poured coffee slow, the way you do when time finally stops rushing you. Max was already on the porch, hammering new boards into the railing. Sweat on his forehead, focus in his eyes. The rhythm of the nails sounded like healing, steady, humble, alive. Need help, baby? I asked. He looked back, smiled. I think I'm good, Ma. You sure? You still don't measure straight, I teased. He laughed, the kind that makes the years fall off a man. You right about that. For the first time in a long while, the laughter didn't echo against pain. It landed on peace. It had been 2 weeks since the court dismissed her case. Lena was still behind bars, waiting for a plea deal. Rumor had it she tried to call Max again, but he didn't pick up. I didn't tell him not to. I didn't need to. When people learn through consequence, instruction becomes unnecessary. The neighborhood had opinions, of course. Church ladies whispering like cicadas in Sunday dresses. Some pitied her, some pitied me. But pity's a cheap emotion. It looks generous, but it costs nothing. I didn't need pity. I needed closure. And that I already had. One afternoon, the mailman dropped off a thick envelope. No return address, but I knew the handwriting, sharp and slanted, like a signature written through tears. From Lena. I sat at the kitchen table, unfolded the paper. Helen, you were right about everything, about me, about love, about what I thought I was owed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I see it now. You never tried to ruin me, you tried to save me from myself. Tell Max I'm sorry. I don't expect him to come back. I just hope he finds peace the way I never learned to. Thank you for everything you gave, and everything you took back. Elena. I sat still for a long time. No tears, no anger, just quiet. When people finally face their reflection, they don't always need your response, just your silence. I folded the letter, placed it in my Bible, right between Proverbs and Psalms. Then I whispered, That's between her and God now. Max started working full-time at the hardware store. Came home tired but smiling. He'd begun paying me rent, his idea, not mine. Every time he handed me that little envelope with cash inside, I'd tuck it into a tin labeled Grace Fund. Because that's what it was, a living apology turned into action. At night, we'd sit on the porch, the radio humming old Sam Cooke songs. He'd hum along, tapping his foot, while I'd just watch the sky change colors. Peace don't always roar back in. Sometimes it creeps soft, barefoot, carrying supper in both hands. One Sunday, Pastor Raymond asked if I'd speak at the women's luncheon. About boundaries and blessings, he said. You've lived it, Sister Helen. I smiled. I've survived it. That day, I stood before 20 women in floral dresses and church hats. Some young and searching, some older and tired. I told them, sometimes love looks like staying, sometimes love looks like letting go, and sometimes it looks like changing the locks and calling the tow truck. They laughed, then they cried, then they clapped. I ended with, kindness don't mean staying soft for people who sharpen knives behind your back. It means loving loud enough to protect your peace. After the luncheon, one young woman came up, tears in her eyes. My mama's going through what you went through, she said. What do I tell her? I held her hands. Tell her this, she ain't crazy, she's just early. Truth always catches up. Weeks later, my lawyer called again. Mrs. Jefferson just confirming. Lena accepted a plea deal. 3 years probation, community service, restitution order in your favor. I smiled. Restitution ain't necessary. She already repaid me with peace. He laughed softly. You're a better woman than most. No, I said, just older. That evening, I watched Max fix the last loose board on the porch. The sun dipped low, painting everything in amber. He wiped his brow, looked over his shoulder, and grinned. All done, Ma. Look sturdy. Like you, he said, half smiling. I chuckled. Sturdy's just another word for unbroken, baby. I thought about everything that had happened, every silence, every storm, every lesson. I realized I hadn't lost anything. I'd been pruned. And when God prunes, he's not punishing the tree, he's preparing it to bloom stronger. The porch light flickered on, moths circling like prayers too stubborn to land. The air smelled like magnolia and second chances. I leaned back in my chair, sipped sweet tea, and whispered to the quiet. They wanted my silence, I gave them a sermon, now they can keep the echo. The air that summer carried forgiveness in it, thick, humid, but healing. Cicadas hummed like a choir of tired angels, and my magnolia tree shed its petals slow, like white confetti for a celebration I didn't plan but surely deserved. Some nights I still heard echoes of the storm, the arguments, the lies, the sound of the spoon hitting the tile, but they no longer hurt. Now they sounded like memory being filed away, not reopened. It was exactly a year since the words, "We got married yesterday," had cracked my world open. A whole year since I'd watched kindness grow claws and learned how to sharpen mine in prayer. I stood on that same porch, now painted fresh, my rocking chair newly sanded, my peace unbothered. The neighborhood kids were running in the yard, chasing fireflies, their laughter climbing into the dusk like music made of second chances. Max came out holding 2 glasses of sweet tea. Anniversary of your freedom, huh? I chuckled, something like that. He handed me the glass. You ever miss her? I took a sip, the sugar hit like memory. No, I miss who I thought she was, but missing a mirage don't make you thirsty, it just makes you wise. He nodded slowly. She wrote me, you know. Though. Said she's doing her community service at the youth center. Said she's learning. I smiled faintly. That's good. Maybe the Lord's using her to teach somebody else how not to be her. He laughed, soft but real. You never stop turning pain into poetry. Poetry lasts longer than revenge, baby. Later that week, I got an invitation in the mail, city seal on the front, gold embossed. Community Appreciation Banquet, honoring Helen Jefferson for outstanding service. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. After all the humiliation, after the betrayal, after the courtroom and the gossip, here I was being celebrated for surviving it with grace. When I arrived that night, people stood and clapped. Not polite applause, the kind that sounds like folks saying, "We saw what you went through. We saw who you stayed." Pastor Raymond handed me the microphone. Say a few words, Sister Helen. I smiled, adjusted my glasses, and let the hush fall. I ain't gonna preach long tonight, I began. But I will say this, people talk about miracles like they only happen in hospitals or hurricanes. But sometimes, the real miracle is learning to shut a door without anger and still leave the porch light on. A murmur of amen rippled through the crowd. Some folks tried to take from me my peace, my dignity, my savings, but they couldn't touch my soul. Because you can't steal what was built on prayer and patience. I paused, scanning faces glowing in the soft light. I used to think the Lord punished me by letting me see the worst in people. But now I know He blessed me by showing me how strong I was when they showed their weakness. The room went quiet, the kind of silence that listens. Then I said softly, kindness ain't weakness, it's wisdom wearing heels. Laughter, applause, a few tears. I smiled and stepped away from the mic, heart full but still. When I got home that night, there was one last unopened box in the hallway, the same pile I'd stacked months ago. Only one remained. No label, just a faint scent of perfume that had long since faded. I opened it slowly. Inside, the photo frame from their wedding day, the one she'd mailed back. But this time, tucked inside the corner was a new note, short and shaky. Thank you for teaching me what love really costs. Elena. I stared at the picture, Max and Lena smiling, naive, foolish, human. Then I closed the frame gently and set it on the shelf. Not as a reminder of betrayal, but proof that redemption sometimes travels the long road back through shame. That evening, the sky turned gold. Max grilled dinner on the porch while I hummed old church songs under my breath. The world felt small again but safe. Mama, he said, you ever think about marrying again? I laughed. At my age, baby, I'm married to peace, and I don't cheat. He grinned, fair enough. We ate under the last light of day, quiet, warm, steady. When I was younger, I used to pray for closure. Now I pray for clarity. Closure ends a chapter. Clarity writes a new one. I realized the difference that night. Forgiveness closes your mouth, but wisdom opens your eyes. And I was finally seeing everything clearly. The crickets started singing. The magnolia leaves rustled soft in the dark. And I whispered, Lord, I thank you, not for what you gave, but for what you took away. Because sometimes subtraction is the holiest kind of addition. Morning light touched the walls of my kitchen like it was asking permission to come in. The air was still, peaceful, like even the dust decided to rest. I sat with my tea, steam curling upward like prayers. I didn't have to say any more. Some stories end with fireworks. Mine ended with understanding. Max sat across from me, half asleep, reading the newspaper. Ma, he said, you've been smiling at that same cup of tea for 5 minutes. I'm just thinking. About what? How silence is expensive, but it's worth every penny. He chuckled, you gonna put that in one of your church talks? Maybe, I said, but they won't hear it right till they've lived it wrong. Later that week, I went back to church for the women's meeting. Sister Ruth waved me over. Helen, you're glowing again. I smiled, peace got a good moisturizer. We laughed, the kind of laugh that only comes from women who have been through things that could have broken them but didn't. Then a young woman in the back raised her hand. How do you forgive someone who don't say sorry? The room went quiet. All eyes turned to me. I stood up slow, like wisdom takes its time to find its voice. You don't forgive them, baby, I said. You forgive yourself for holding your breath, waiting on an apology that was never coming. A hush fell over the room. One woman started to cry. And when you finally exhale, I continued, that's not weakness, that's resurrection. Weeks later, Max told me he wanted to start a youth program, Project Magnolia. He called it, helping kids learn financial independence, teaching them how not to get trapped by debt or love disguised as generosity. He said, I want them to know what you taught me. That money can build a home or buy a prison, depending on who holds the keys. I smiled, tears burning my eyes. Then, baby, you go build them a home. And he did. Within months, the program grew. Church kids, single mothers, retired folks, all learning to balance checkbooks, build credit, start small businesses. Every Friday, they'd gather under the magnolia tree, just like I used to gather folks on my porch. And when they asked what inspired it, Max always said, my mama, she taught me that love without boundaries is a storm without shelter. One afternoon, I got a letter from the county clerk again. Enclosed was a check restitution from Lena's case. Amount $18,000. The exact total of what I'd paid for their rent, furniture, and grace. I laughed till I cried. God got humor, baby. He pays interest. I donated half to the church, the rest to Project Magnolia. Because money that once hurt me was now feeding somebody else's peace. A local news crew came to interview us. The reporter asked, "Mrs. Jefferson, what made you turn your pain into purpose?" I smiled straight at the camera. Because pain is just tuition, honey, and I wasn't about to waste my education. That night, I sat on my porch one last time before the first frost. The magnolia tree was shedding slow, petals soft against the ground like tiny white truths. I rocked in my chair, blanket around my shoulders, tea steaming beside me. The stars were bright, a kind of brightness that felt earned. Inside, Max was humming in the kitchen, the same tune his daddy used to sing. The air was thick with cornbread and memory. I looked up and whispered, "Harold, I did what you said, I let the storm teach me, and I'm still standin'." Every story got a sermon inside it. Mine ain't about revenge. It's about remembering that grace can sound like thunder when spoken soft. I learned that some folks you save by holding them close, and some you save by letting them go. Both are love, one's just quieter. And as I sat there, moonlight catching on my tea, I realized something simple but holy. Peace don't clap. It hums. The wind stirred the magnolia branches one last time, petals falling like snow. I smiled and whispered. This was Aunt Helen, still standin', still lovin', still learnin'.